Hey, Club E, welcome. Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I am your architect of business growth and will work with you to unlock your potential and amplify the scale of your company. Today, we're talking about taking the mystery out of boards. I want to thank our sponsors, Irish Titan, an e-commerce and web development firm, Boulay Group, CPAs and advisors, Highland Bank, a locally owned community bank, Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency, Minnesota Sales, a sales acceleration firm, and the Network Connect, a catalytic gateway for growing your company. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment and have you subscribe and like our Club E channel. We need your help, so please take a little moment. It'll just take a second. I'm gonna wait. It's okay, you got a moment. Click on the subscribe and like button below the video. It will allow us to better serve you, bring higher quality content, and also let you know when our sessions are live. Today, I'd like to introduce to you our speaker, Jim Zuehlke, and Jim is president of Cardinal Board Services. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. Love being here with you.
Yep, well, glad to have you. You and I have had many interactions over the years, so it's a privilege to have you with us.
Great. I appreciate it. You know, my only regret for doing this today is that it's not at the Minneapolis Club Luncheon, which is the best lunch every single time I go down and have an event with you. Or you attend your event or go speak at an event.
Yeah. Not only the lunch is good, but the desserts are fabulous.
Yes, exactly.
Don't tell anybody, but I usually have two.
You got it.
Anyway, Jim's contact info is in the comment field below. But it's Jim Z at cardinalboardservices.com. But again, it's in the comment field below. And then, all right, Jim, to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your firm, and the various firms and activities that you're up and working with.
So thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me. As you know, I've been to a lot of Club E events and spoken at a number of them. Every time I've gone, it's always been of great value, good information, meet lots of good people. So anybody who's not a member of Club E should be, because it's a great experience to have. So my background, I've been doing this for up to 30 years, doing recruiting and the like for, have my own company, Cardinal Mark. About 10 years ago, we decided to build another company called Cardinal Board Services, because there's a demand in the marketplace for, you know, mostly private companies that want to have a better board experience, and they don't have really any resources to go to. So we've been able to do that, and have been very successful and grown the business nicely over the last, I think it's 9 years now as well. Typically our clients, as odd as it might be, is they're multi-generational family businesses, companies that you may have heard of here in town, such as Marvin Windows or Ryan Companies. And throughout the whole Midwest, we've got a number of different clients that we work with. And yeah, also we work with ESOPs. ESOPs have to have boards, so there's a need there as well, and we've been working with them as well. So been very happy doing it. You know, I've been interested in boards my whole career, and I've been working for about the past 20 years, either serving on boards, I've served on a number of boards, as well as servicing and helping boards with their things. And somebody asked me, so what's so unique about this, about taking the mystery out? What's so unique about it? Well, on May 4th in 1979, Bob Dylan wrote a song, "You Gotta Serve Somebody." And it's a great song, one of his best of all times. And that's the ultimate, is everyone's got a boss. And even the CEO of the company needs a boss to be able to give good feedback and that's really where the board of directors comes into play on lots of different levels for lots of different companies. So.
Great. So are you a Dylan fan, or just that's kind of a random quote?
Yeah, I love it. Of course, the Dylan fan. I'm a Minnesota guy. So, but yeah, when I first heard the song, I go, wow, that really hit home. And that's kind of right in the view of how I've always been interested in boards. Somebody is really responsible for the operation. And it's a pretty mysterious thing. Most employees don't understand the board, even executives. So there's this board of directors, but I don't know what they do. And so there's a lot to be talked about with what it's all about.
All right. Well, we'll get to some of that here today. So again, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, love being here.
So before we get to the meat of the conversation, let's talk about what you, the audience, can receive for your participation. Two things. Number one, the comment field is available for you to put in questions. We'll do our best to get to those questions. And then also, we have a giveaway today. And to participate in that, the hashtag is Cardinal Board. Hashtag Cardinal Board. 3 winners are going to receive a company board assessment. So if you'd like to get an assessment of your current board or determine if your company should create a board, Cardinal Board Services will either do that board assessment, which includes a bylaw review and a board gap analysis, or if you want to know if your company should create a board of advisors or directors, they will also provide to you the steps you need to get going. So again, the hashtag is Cardinal Board to participate into the drawing. And it sounds like a great value. Thanks, Jim, for doing that.
You bet. Love doing it.
All right. So the first question I want to get to, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is there's a lot of different kinds of boards and different reasons for having those boards. There's public boards, private, ESOPs, nonprofits, fiduciaries, advisory, scientific. Shed a little light on some of those differences.
Sure. So there's a term you want to think about it is OPM, other people's money. If a business has got other people's money in it, it has to have a board. That's a public company, and there's about 4,400 public companies in the U.S. ESOPs, the same thing. There's about 6,600 ESOPs in the U.S. And then nonprofits, and there's about 1.4 million nonprofits in the U.S. And many of those are very, very small, but of those groups of people that take other people's money, they have to have a board, and so they're going to need board of directors. So there's lots of opportunities to go out there and do it. The second is private companies. So it could be a family business. There's about 5.5 million family businesses in the U.S., and then just private companies. There's about 300,000 that are just not family, they're just privately owned. And oftentimes the larger ones, once you get up to about your private company, and if you get to be $25, $50 million in revenue, and maybe it's even a second generation owner, they usually have boards to be able to oversee the business. And then there's oftentimes a lot of other things called advisory boards or scientific boards, and that's where you're assigned to help the company navigate some situation. So for a medical device company, they often have a scientific advisory board that helps them. It could be people from the industry that help them, navigate the waters of trying to get the product to market and what the ethical issues might be. Or a scientific one, we just built a scientific advisory board in Michigan, and it was for a auto supplier that wants to get ahead of the curve with autonomous driving and electric cars. And so they brought in some of the best people from around the company just to give them advice of what their engineering team should be working on. Here's some examples.
Okay, and then we're going to talk a little bit about your business, Cardinal Board, a little later in our conversation. But before I move on, does your firm work on recruiting all those different kinds of boards, or do you specialize in specific boards?
We haven't done scientific advisory boards, but we've done advisory boards, we've done private, we've done public, and ESOP. So yes, we've done all of these different types. Each one's a little bit more unique. Different ones, and the requirement to serve is unique depending upon it. The amount of time and the amount of activity that you're going to be doing is different with each one of these types of boards. So that's kind of not one size does not fit all. It's different.
Sure. And some of those early stage companies, which are a little bit more in my world than yours, I've had a number of experiences on advisory boards and can talk to that. But I do have a couple of questions here to you from earlier stage companies from our audience. Want to get to those.
Okay.
From Andrew. Andrew says, I have a small solo consulting practice. I've been thinking about the benefits of creating a board of advisors. Do you think this is a worthwhile pursuit, and how should I go about that?
Great question, Andrew. So kind of the yes/no answer that you should do it. It's first off, you should say, am I willing to commit? Because, putting together a board takes some time. You have to organize your thoughts. You have to have regularly scheduled meetings with agendas that you have to follow. that if it's going to be of value to you, but it's also going to be value to the people you're looking for. An advisory board typically isn't very, it is not fiduciary, it's not really financially driven. It's more about your unique circumstances. So Andrew, that advisory board could be of huge value if you're trying to focus on a marketplace like education or medical or manufacturing, and having some people from that industry could help you better hone your services you're trying to go off and sell, and even help you land some clients. They may know people can help you land clients.
Okay. And another question, Jim, from Lewis. We have a product launched and are a self-owned LLC. So again, an early stage company. We do not yet have a board. We've had requests, but I want to understand why someone would even want to join our board, and what makes a board meeting valuable to an uncompensated board member. Similarly, what makes a board meeting valuable to an equity compensated board member? Okay.
So why somebody would want to join your board, Lewis, is because it's kind of part of the DNA, and Rick, you know this because you've been on boards. Your DNA has to be something that you want to give and help. And definitely it's going to be the case if you're uncompensated. But generally speaking, the first most important piece of it is that you're a person that wants to give and help. The second piece of it is you want to get the experience, because a board experience is unlike no other. And for you to get on that public board or that big ESOP or whatever, the more board experience you have, the better suited you are for it. So that person could pick up some experience, could also pick up some, it could also help themselves with just wanting to help as well. Now, the flip side of it, for why would you want to have an equity-based board or a person on your board of advisors? Why would they want to have a board of advisors? Well, it was a friend of mine once told me, he said, I really appreciate putting together this board of advisors, and at any given meeting I had 100 years worth of experience sitting at my table. And so he'd be able to ask this person about distribution, another person about manufacturing, another person about finance. And so as a equity participant, you go, your investment now is worth more value because you have these other people around the table to help give good answers for you.
Okay. And as we look at the board members individually, who typically serves on a director of a board? And in your opinion, given all the years of experience you've had, what makes an ideal board candidate?
Good, great question, because we all want to believe we're fabulous candidates, but there's certain things you need to check the box, and we usually want to check as many boxes as possible. First off, you have executives sit on boards. And when I say executives, there's somebody who's probably been a general manager with a profit and loss experience. And the reason we say that is that's the most ideal one, because the typically boards of directors, at least, there's always a financial component. You're always looking at the P&L and the balance sheet. So knowing how that operates and what the levers are that work with it are really important. The other piece is when you're a general manager and have a P&L, you understand about strategy, about competition, about human capital issues, all of those different pieces. So you have that experience. Now, if I look at the other part of it, sometimes we take people on the board who don't have that deep P&L background, and reason that they're looking for them is maybe they have a unique market knowledge, maybe they have a certain discipline, whether it be one board we did, that person needed to be in manufacturing, have a Lean Six Sigma, because this company is going to make that journey, so they wanted somebody on the board like that. They need to be strategic. Oftentimes, strategy is a big component that's missing in a smaller company. It's good long-term strategy. Or they probably have some kind of a unique skill. It could be technology or something else. So the other factors that we look for an ideal board member is usually they're 2 times the size of the current company. So if you're a $100 million company, we look for somebody that's been in a 200 or plus business. Now, if you're in a $20 billion business going on a $100 million company's board, sometimes that's a little bit of an overkill, because you've got, you've got an advertising budget of 100 million or something like that. So you have to be able to be relatable. But usually it's 2 times the company. So and the other thing is you need to have soft hands and hard gloves. And what I mean by soft hands and hard gloves that we look for is you need to be supportive of the board, of the management team and the CEO. Those were the soft hands, be a cheerleader and do some of that. But you need to have hard gloves on sometimes because you got to be the person that says, I don't agree with what you're doing. This isn't right. You need to think differently with your strategy and challenge the conventional thinking.
Soft hands, hard gloves. That's a good one. I'll try to remember that one.
Yeah.
And then also, it's kind of curious. I hadn't heard that before. Talk a little bit more about that 2 times the size. That's an interesting angle.
Well, oftentimes when you're a new member coming on a board, they're bringing you on the board because of the future, what's going to happen in the future with the company, not what happened in the past, the future. So if they've got growth plans to double the company over the next 5 years, and you've already been through that, you already done that, you'll know some of the challenges that they have. And we always want the person that's coming in, that has been there, done that, gives a lot more perspective, because the most valuable board member is the one that asks the best questions. So they say, well, have you thought about what you're going to do in China? Have you thought about what's the regulatory aspect of that, of bringing this new product up? So if they've been there and done that, they can ask really good questions, and they go, wow, we haven't thought about that. So tell us, what's your experience? And you go, well, here's what my experience is in the past. You don't lead with, this is what I've done in the past. You ask better questions because of the experiences.
Okay. We've had a couple of questions come in. A reminder, hashtag Cardinal Board to get into the drawing, to get Jim's help either assessing your current board or helping you determine whether you should be building a board. 3 winners will be drawn. And also the comment field is where you can ask your questions. And we've had a couple of questions, and I'm going to get to one. I'm going to hold another for a few, but this was an interesting one from Matthew. Matthew asked, Jim, is much thought given to board chemistry?
Matthew, excellent question. It's really, really important. You don't want a bunch of clones, so they're all alike. And that's what people think about boards in the past for the good old boy network, because they played golf together or whatever. But you need, in kind of the next one we're going to talk about is, what are current trends. Diversity is the most hottest trend on boards today. And so we want people with a diverse background. Diversity is not just about gender. It's about gender, geography, age, ethnicity, all of those things. But we need to have people that can get along and respect each other. They don't have to be best friends. Matter of fact, the boards that I sit on, we don't do anything outside the boardroom. We like each other and we respect each other, and we often disagree. But yes, chemistry can actually kill the board if it's bad, because people just check out or they won't participate. But good chemistry really can bring the board and the company much farther.
So a follow-on question to that is, that's a intangible thing you're trying to assess. So how do you try to get your arms even around that? I would think that would be pretty hard.
Well, it's because going through the process of bringing on a new board member, you want to have a couple of interactions with the person, because if you don't know them at all, and you want to have them meet a number of the board members and have them challenge and ask questions and see things. And what you're really looking for is the person thoughtful, and is the person want to give? Do they want to be a part of the organization? The one thing you always look for, does the person come in and think that it's their job to tell management what to do? If that's what they think, it's always going to be a bad experience. But if they're thoughtful and they've got a different perspective, but they seem to be interested in the company and in giving back, then they're usually a pretty good fit.
So more about asking questions than telling what to do.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you touched on a few of the current trends. Maybe go into that a little bit more. What are our boards facing in terms of the trends around the makeup. And then as we look forward, any trends that you see emerging in 2021 and beyond. And one of our questions came in about that from Mary Lynn, given COVID-19, are you seeing any indication that public boards are considering broadening their membership criteria to include C-suite members experienced in navigating large-scale crises? So again, trends looking forward, and how does COVID fit into that?
Let me go in reverse order to Mary Lynn's question about the pandemic and what's going on. Typically, that is already covered in the audit. The person that runs the audit committee also usually has risk underneath them, and so risk can often be, could be this pandemic. It also can be risk can come from competitors. Risk can come from financial situations, different places. So they typically are looking for somebody that can help them with managing risk, and this would just be one of the things underneath it. So, what trends are we seeing here today that will go into 2021? Obviously, diversity is the number one. There's an organization out there, Women on Boards 2020, and they've actually, for public companies, that is, they want to see 20% by 2020 this year, and it happened actually last year, at least 20% of the directors on public boards to be women, because 50% of our population is women, but there's very few women on the board. So that has improved. So, but we're seeing a lot more diversity where they're saying, we just want somebody that's not from Minnesota or not from where we preside, or we want somebody from this region of the country, because that's an expansion for us. Age, we're trending much younger. We want somebody who's 35 or 40 or 45. We don't want, the thing that most boards shy away from, if somebody's retired, they're not interested in having to serve on their board because things change way too fast nowadays. The second trend I see is Omni-Channel. It's a big word, and what it really means is no matter what your distribution strategy is, somehow you need somebody that knows how to engage with your end customer. And you think of retailers are omni-channel. So retailers have online, they have stores, they have catalog, and so they have distribution. So, but omni-channel, I see it all different businesses are want to know what that end customer is thinking. Technology is one that's getting asked all the time for us, and technology is not just what we think about. It's not just about the CIO. So it's cyber technology, it's operational technology. I'm working with an engineering firm that feels that their biggest competitor is technology, not another company. So operational technology, and then a big one that most people are looking at, especially if they're in the industrial space, is digital transformation. Once again, that omni-channel, how do we get digitally connected with more people? And then the last one we see is human capital, and from both sides this becomes really important. We had before March of this year, I mean, the hardest thing we had going was companies finding talent to be able to hire. Now we have the challenge of what do we do with our talent now that it's all changing. So human capital, CHROs are much bigger demand now and will be going forward.
Well, I got several more questions here. You're setting a record on audience questions and participation. Reminder, hashtag Cardinal Board. Also put in your comments and questions. And then also a reminder to hit the subscribe and like button and join our Club E community. So again, hit the subscribe and like button. All right, so I have from a Brad, I'm interested in serving on a board. How do I go about seeing if there's a match with what I can offer? So again, this would be the person looking for their first time board. How do they do it? And then I would add to that, are there any, I would call them must-haves from a resume or skill set perspective?
Good, that's great. Kind of plays into the next question I thought about with what do they need to do to land their first board? And so first thing is, if you don't have it, get some P&L and general management experience. The more you have of that, the more interesting you are to a board. The second thing is be prepared. If you really want to do this, I know I did back when I was 30 years ago, but be prepared to try to figure out how I could add value and always be curious and be willing. The other piece is you got to have a network. you know, you got to have a network that goes beyond just the people you know every day. You got to find ways just to be connected to more people. Next would be to be a giving person. You got to start thinking about giving your time to people that are trying to build something. If you can give your time with no return expected except for the experience and be able to help. And then you just have to start. You have to start just looking and doing and finding ways. And when I say start, one of the things that I looked, the first board I ever sat on was I live in the Minnetonka area. My son played baseball at Bennett Field, so there's the Bennett Little League Board of Directors. There's 20 guys that sat around that were all coaches. So if you're a coach, you had to be on the board of directors. But I learned something about a board, and then many more after that. There's a lot of places where you get involved that you got to give up time. Sunday night at 8 o'clock is when the board meetings were. It's like the last thing I want to do after putting the kids to bed. But you got to start somewhere, and you got to start giving and being curious.
Okay, great answer. Great answer. So a couple more questions. This one's from Scott. Small company, 3 shareholders and owners. Do you recommend more than 3 non-related owners bringing in outsiders to the board? And if so, why and how many would you add?
So it depends how the ownership goes with things. It could be somebody, it could be a 60-20-20 ownership structure. So there's three owners, but the 60% person gets to do everything they want. So and also, why would you want to bring on a board, bring a person on a board, or bring a board to your group, or bring independent people? The reason you want is for someone to actually come in and be able to give you some input beyond what you see. One of the boards I'm working with today, they've never had an outside director. We're bringing their first 2 outside directors in. And part of the reason is that the board meetings are just, it's the same as working with each other every day. You have nobody with any new ideas out there. And so if you want to bring in, it'd probably be better to bring in 2. So the 3 can still be in control, but 2 will give you a different perspective. And you probably want, and it brings some formality as well. So the 3 of you have to provide a quarterly board meeting to go over financials and go over strategy and risks and all of those things, because they have these independents that are going to come into the meeting. So that's a really good thing to do. But 2 is probably enough. 1 might be discounted. 3 or 4 might be too many to swallow to begin with. Just start small and then grow from there.
Okay, good. All right, question from Pete. Discuss how to reconfigure the board as you grow, specifically the investor board members transitioning to more experience and industry people. And then he said, I bet Rick and you, meaning Jim, have had and seen this play out. So how do you reconfigure the board as the company grows and changes?
So I think one of the most important things that a board gets formed and has bylaws, and then they have different committees with guidelines as well. The bylaws, you need to review your bylaws, because the hardest thing is to get somebody off your board. So if you want one of the investors to leave and bring in a new independent in from the outside, so your bylaws have to be able to think about that, and you need to change your bylaws. Like it could be a term limit, like you serve so many terms, or you reach a certain age, or the company is at a certain size. We need to change something. So bylaws become very important. Why to do that? And it's never easy. We've had some just this year where we've had to go through this, and it's sometimes it's hard, but you got to have a way so you can easily have people exit the board so you can have room for new ones. Or you have to expand the size of the board. Maybe the investor's still going to be there, but we're going to go from a 5-person board to a 7 or a 9-person board, depending on the size of the business. And that's a very common thing that happens, is that you have to figure out a way to transition and grow and improve the board.
And what's just a side note, you mentioned these bigger boards. How big does a board need to be before it kind of gets a little unruly or just is too large to manage?
I find that single digit is better. So something under 10, and it has to have a meaning of why it should be that way, depending upon the structure of your company and the type of board members that you have. You can oftentimes, with some board members, you can make them be, it could be an ex, the ex-chairman could be the chairman emeritus. So they're still on the board, but they're really not. They can't vote anymore and some other things. But once you get in the double digits, that's for a company. Most of the times when I see a double-digit board, that's a company that's in the billions of dollars of revenue, and maybe even 10 or 20 billion dollars of revenue. So keeping it, I think 7 is the perfect number. It could be 3 insiders, 4 outsiders, or 4 insiders, 3 outsiders, something like that. So it's got a good balance to it, and everybody knows everybody, and it can keep, the board meeting will move along on a regular basis as well.
And is it fair to say for the nonprofit world that the vast majority of those, until you start getting into pretty big companies, are not compensated?
Yes. 2 things about nonprofit boards. So if you think about joining a nonprofit board, very good. And you think about, well, nonprofits, they're not that interesting. Well, Regions Hospital is a nonprofit. Children's Hospital is a nonprofit, and they compensate their board members oftentimes. And there's really a couple different boards at these big nonprofits. There's the board of directors that runs the company, that hires and fires the CEO, that helps approve strategy, and usually there's an executive committee, which is 5 to 7 people. But their big board might be 40 people because a lot of big donors might be on the board, and then oftentimes there's a foundation board for big nonprofits. So universities and hospitals and other big nonprofits will have those as well. And once again, you get experience. You really want to get on often just the compensation or the audit or the executive committee. It's a smaller group that makes the real decisions on the organization. But you're right. Oftentimes, a lot of it's not. There's not any compensation unless it's a big kind of. It's a nonprofit, but only in name. It's a big business operation.
Now, you mentioned your first board being the baseball field. My first board was the Minnesota Zoo Foundation board.
Excellent board. I've only met great people who've been on that board.
Well, good to know. Nice answer. Good answer, Jim.
Yeah, that's a great board.
I did not pay Jim to say that. I'm just saying.
No.
All right. Another question from the audience, from Anne. When working with others to express your interest in a board role, how would you recommend preparing for that meeting?
That's a really, really good question, because that's a really fine line to walk to say, I'm looking in that. You should first off say, what value can I bring to a board? Think long and hard, what value can I bring to a board? What kind of board would I bring value to? And then what are you willing to do? I mean, because a typical board, when I recruit a board of director, I say, well, how much time is this going to take? And the typical board on a private company board is 70 to 80 hours a year. Well, that's 2 weeks. That's a 2-week vacation, right? And that's the board meetings themselves, as well as other meetings that you go off and do. Now, I know our mutual friend Sven told me that in a public company, it's more like 250 hours, or 10% of your year spent on the board at a public company. They've got a lot more requirements to sit for. So you need to make sure you're comfortable with that, and you can have that time. And then have the conversation, say, here's the reasons why I'm ready to do this. And just to ask the person also, do you know of any companies that would be interesting in, or places that could use my experience? And hopefully the person you're meeting with will be able to help you navigate that.
Yeah, I don't know what the multiple is, but whatever the meeting is, 1, 2, 3, 4 hours, or even an all-day board meeting, it's a multiple of that: preparing, reading everything, processing things, doing your homework and research. It's not all fun and games, is it?
Yep, exactly.
So we've had a number of questions. Again, a reminder, #Cardinal board, as well as putting in any other questions that you'd like answered. Jim and I will try to get to as many of those as we can. Let's pivot a little bit talk a little bit more about Cardinal Board Services. How are you unique in the market, and what does your ideal client look like?
So, I was thinking about that as well, and we talked before, and there's that commercial that's on TV with Farmers Insurance. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. I love those commercials and all those different things. And that's exactly what's unique about us is we've done so many, from public companies to large multi-generational families to ESOPs to private companies, that we've seen so many things. And that's what makes it pretty unique. I remember we've had some incredible clients, blue chip companies that come to us and ask us to help them out. And usually if they're coming to us, that means they're probably pretty well managed because they realize that they need an independent person to come and help them find it. And we also, because we've served on boards and helped boards, we know both sides of the table, what it's like as a director and what it's like as a company to bring a new one in that can be beneficial for them as well. So one of the things that's been unique since we did start this 9 years ago, every board search we do, I would say the majority of all the board searches we do, they end up hiring 2 people instead of 1, because the comment comes back, I didn't think we could get this high a quality. I really like this person and I really like this person. Why don't we bring both of them on? So that has always been a big kudo for us, is that we brought enough of the right people in that they want 2. They didn't just want 1. And I think the last piece of what makes us really unique is we got all aspects. We've been talking a lot about joining a board or board recruitment and things like that, but we've done a lot on the other side, the governance side. So we've done a lot with compensation studies. What should you be paying them? Because it's a mystery. There is no formula. I once did a study for a company, and 2 public companies at the exact same market cap. The compensation was 2 times more in one company than another. Why is that? There's not a lot of logic, but you have to help companies make sure they're compensating people correctly. We do compensation work. We've done a lot of bylaw review and helping companies upgrade their bylaws, and then just governance help as well. And then lastly, onboarding. So you're a person that's coming onto a board. I've got 2 that are coming on to a board here this summer, and they've never served on a board. And so how can they best prepare to get on the board? So we'll help the company do an onboarding process and the candidate of how they should get education to the new director that's going to come on board. So we got all these unique experiences over 9 years on both sides of the table.
All right, great. Had another question that came in, another early stage question. It's pretty obvious these bigger companies have to have very sophisticated boards, and you can help folks with that. Another question about the early stage one: how far along should a company be before they consider a board? And in a startup, should you build a board right away in year 1, or wait until it's a little bit more mature so that you know what some of the issues are? And why don't I let you answer, and then I might chime in a little bit too.
Because you've got great experience in the business you do, Rick. Is that I would say it's never too early to have a board, but you have to have some meaningful reason for having a board as well. Some people, I've had some startups that have gone and started boards, and they did it to help raise money. So the board member is going to help them raise money or give them access to something that they're looking for. That's okay too, because and that's more of an advisory board type of role. I like to see some. You have to have. I would say you need to be a business that's got potential. If you're a small startup and you can see that we're going to be at 5 million, then 10, and then 20 over the next 5 years, a board, the sooner the better, would help you. You got to be able to afford the time, because it's time consuming. We talk about all these hours as a director. It's a lot more hours as the company, preparing the board work every quarter, presenting it, and then taking those recommendations under consideration. So it's something you better be serious about. You don't want to start and then bail out in 6 months or a year. I've seen that happen, and it's not good for anybody.
Sure. And I'd echo what you said, which is I think you can get started right away. In particular, as you said, if there's certain skills, and I think you touched on something for the early stage companies, they don't have to have a fiduciary board, and an advisory board is just fine. and those folks oftentimes can get compensated in equity, so it doesn't cost you cash. And you touched on it earlier where you have 100 years worth of experience sitting around the table. For the early stage company, it's not just years of experience, it's the roles they fill. So you may not have enough money to have a kind of a VP level sales and marketing person, yet you can add that through your advisory board. Or maybe you're looking to grow your business at a certain pace to a certain size, and you can bring people in who have done that before. And so again, doesn't have to be a fiduciary board, can be an advisory board, and you can get very tailored over the specifics around a type of person that you want to hire.
Hey, Rick, I want to respond one more.
Yeah.
That is, the one thing you don't want to do is bring your accountant, your lawyer, anybody that you're already paying, that's already a paid advisor in the company. You don't want them on your board because they've got conflict of interest. They're receiving money from you for providing you a service. You can ask them a question anytime you want, and you should keep that outside the boardroom, because oftentimes people go, I'll just go to my accountant and my lawyer and whoever else might be that I'm already engaged with. That's a bad idea because you don't get real independent thought.
Yep. In fact, one of my portfolio companies, I brought in a couple of folks joining an advisory board, and we really changed the dynamics of that company given all the different skill sets. So yes, again, an advisory board can work in many instances just as good, if not better, than a fiduciary board. Okay, a couple more questions here. You definitely are setting the record today. So either you have a big fan club, or you got some of your family members chiming in under pseudo names, asking their questions. So Jocelyn asks, is there a database or website to see around current board searches?
Jocelyn, I don't know of any that are out there. I would often, there is a group in, I think they're out of California, and they've changed their name. It used to be called ExecuRank, I think, or something like that. And they used to charge you $100 a month, and they said they'd get you on a board. Anybody who's ever done that, I've never heard them actually get on a board. And I'm not sure if it's executive, something like that. Be wary of somebody who says they can get you on a board, because it's not something that's easy to do. And so I don't know of one where you could say, I'm going to sign up here and somebody's going to find me.
Good point. A second one from Jocelyn. Besides LinkedIn, how does one market themselves as available for board membership?
Once again, Jocelyn, I don't know of anything other than that, but LinkedIn is really interesting because, believe it or not, I mean, this is our full-time gig to do, is to find board members. 80% of the people we find them on LinkedIn. So you definitely want to have, you definitely want to really spend time to make sure you have a good LinkedIn profile, because people will find you. You still want to network as well, because a lot of positions get filled with just through a network. But LinkedIn is really powerful. And actually, I went and updated my LinkedIn profile. There's a gal here in town by the name of Ann Pryor, who's just awesome, and she can help people. She charges for it. She's a top-ranked LinkedIn consultant, and she helped me make my profile be better for my business. But I often tell people that want to get on boards, use somebody like that to help you fine-tune it, fine-tune being able to be able to say the right things in your LinkedIn profile so people find you.
So you had commented earlier about a trend with boards getting younger in terms of who they brought on the board. Question came in, does it make sense to wait until one is closer to retirement in order to avoid conflicts of interest and life balance? How does that play with what you said earlier, that boards are looking to get people younger and younger?
Well, a couple things. The challenge, a board typically looks at looks at a 10-year. So if I bring Rick on the board, I'm thinking I at least want to get 10 years out of, because it takes a year or two for you just to understand the rhythm of the business, and you're adding value all along. But then once you see a couple cycles, so if you wait till you're almost retired, and by the way, if you decide you want to get on a board, it's going to take you 3 or 4 years till you land the first one, maybe 5 years, if you're really diligent and keep at it. So if you're 60 and you say, well, I'm going to retire at 65, and it takes you you're 65, you get on your first board, and you're just retiring then, that's not a very attractive piece. What I mean is they said about conflicts of interest. That's a very good point that you might have to, step down from a board or recuse yourself from some topics if there's a conflict of interest. That's a problem that's nice to have, if you're on a board and you find something like that. That means because once you get on a board, it's amazing you get on more boards because people hear that you're on the board or you meet other board members that they say, yeah, you're a pretty good person. So I still think the earlier is better. The last part of conflict is time, and there is a time element with, and usually, once again, though, if you're executive level, if you're a VP level person, you're going to be able to have more control of your schedule than if you're, a first level manager or something like that with a young family.
Okay. And we got some other questions. Reminder, #Cardinal Board for the drawing, as well as hit the subscribe and like button. Subscribe and like our clubby community. All right, from a Wally, and I really like this question a lot. Talk a little bit about the role of a secretary on your board and the role that they play, pluses and minuses. Our lawyer was secretary and really helped manage and formalize the meetings.
Yeah. So there's so what a secretary is, and oftentimes somebody you have a person like the lawyer, or it could be the CFO that's not on the board but sits in the board, that basically takes notes on all of the motions that were presented and voted on and passed. And so that when the next board book comes out, you have all the minutes from the last board meeting. Very valuable to have. Oftentimes it's played by outside counsel or by somebody that can document the meeting, and it's really of high value. But not all boards do that. It's a little bit more flowing, and so I think that and the other piece of it is what Wally talked about was that their secretary helped the meeting keep flowing and going, and that's one that's more vocal. And oftentimes the secretary is there to just record the meeting and not to be part of it. Really, the job of the chairman of the board is to manage the meeting. So that's their number one job to do. They're the one that's supposed to be driving the bus during the meeting and making sure we're not stuck in the weeds and keep the conversation going, and that our 4-hour meeting doesn't turn into a 7-hour meeting. It's really the chairman's supposed to do that. And sometimes some chairmans aren't like that, and that's just the way it is. But so having somebody else there is a big help. Thanks, Wally.
Yeah, very good question from Wally there. What about, you mentioned timing. So let's say the meeting's on the calendar for 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever, and it's running long. If you were an outsider kind of watching that, what would you recommend?
Well, if it's consistently running long, I'd start to say, are we scheduling too little bit of time? Oftentimes the reason that the meetings run long is we spend too much time in the rearview mirror. We're debating why they made the decision last quarter to do this or to do that, or to book this inventory number. It's like, that's a mistake to spend way too much time. Or the second thing is that one of the directors didn't come prepared. They didn't read their board book. They haven't done their studying. So they're asking questions, and management has to answer the questions that are answered in the book. And so the time's running over. So the chairman needs to make a decision that says, do we need to schedule more time because there's more important things to talk about? That's number one. Number two, saying hold directors accountable to come prepared. And number three, some of this discussion, the reason it might be going over is that could be dished off to a compensation committee or an audit committee or an executive committee. That is part of it as well. So oftentimes it's a little bit left on the chairman's shoulder to figure out what's going on. And often, it can be, it makes sense that if you think it should be 4 hours, you have to have a reason why it's 4 hours. If you think it should be 6, people live with it as long as they know how long it's going to be. What ends up happening is, in some of the boards I've been on, is it's like all of a sudden it's from 9 to noon. And at noon, people are looking around, they're going, hey, I gotta go because I have something else because I scheduled something this afternoon because it's supposed to be done at noon. And so you lose the director, you lose the momentum of the board meeting. That's always a real bad case if you start losing momentum.
If one were to have kind of a pie chart, and that pie chart measured how much talking by individuals and how much listening, how would you skew that towards the CEO and the management team versus the board? Meaning, should the CEO and management team be talking the whole time and the board just listening? Or should the CEO and the management team be speaking for a modest amount of time and have the board do more of the talking?
So I think you could, a real simple equation would be a third, a third, a third. Management needs to present. Now, once again, we should have read the board book, so we should know everything that's happened, but they should present kind of and give some color around the comments. The board should be asking questions a third of the time to help better understand it. And then there should be a joint discussion about the future and hot topics together with management about a third of the time. And that's probably not a perfect pie chart, but somewhere in there, that's a balanced pie chart, which is what you want.
Yeah, definitely want balance. So we've had a few questions also come in around challenges. Talk about what some of the challenges are serving on a board, and then any, I think the right word would be common misconceptions about serving on boards.
Yeah, I think there's 4 big challenges about serving on a board, and I love telling you these because you serve on these boards, Rick, and so you can call me out if you don't think it's right. I think time is the first challenge. It's the time. It's not just the time in the board meetings. We can put that on our calendar and we can schedule around it. We have no issue with that. It's the time of preparation. The board book arrives the night before the board meeting. Like, I usually like to read the board book 3 times. The day I get it, I skim through it real quick, take about an hour, and then I do it a second time, and then the third time I go in deeper and write down questions. So there's that time that is not accounted for. It's oftentimes, depending on what day the board meeting is at. But then there's a lot of ad hoc time. There could be, like with this, this COVID crisis goes on. One of the boards I sit on is we have now scheduled a monthly call. We quarterly meetings, but it was every 2 weeks. Now we've gone to a month at a time to get updated on what's going on, or it's about the PPP loan or whatever it might be. So there's those things. Those ad hoc times can add up as well. And if you're a busy executive, getting on the calendar becomes hard. This next thing I think is the right personality. You need to be a cheerleader. You need to be a coach. You need to be a parent sometimes, and you also need to be an expert. So you got to be strong-willed to make sure that you have the company's best interest. So the right personality balance is important. The most important thing I almost think is ego check. It's a real simple one. Can you leave your ego at the door? You're there to help. You're not there to fix. You're helping, not fixing. And then one that often goes unlooked at is, are you challenging yourself to add value? Not just showing up to the meeting and questioning what management does, not just be checking the box type thing. Are you adding value? Are you calling the CEO between meetings and talking to him and saying, how's this going? And I know that was a struggle. You ask him how his family's doing, because this is a lonely job as a CEO. So are you adding value to the board all the time while you're there? And the value changes. My expertise, wherever brought me on the board, is only then. What about all the other issues? Can I add value? And sometimes adding value is keeping your mouth shut. That's as well.
Yeah, lots of good nuggets there. I wrote myself a few notes to remind me on how to behave at some of these board meetings. Hey, you mentioned the board book and the board materials. I want to go back to that just for a moment. What do you think is the right amount of time to give board members to go through those materials?
I'd like it a week ahead. I've never got one a week ahead. So I think 3 or 4 days ahead of time is enough, where you've got some time time to digest it. So the other thing, Rick, you made a question, is what are some misconceptions? And I didn't touch on that. I want to just touch on a couple things. One misconception is that I'm going to make a lot of money being on a board. You always make less than you would, than the time and the expertise you give. But you gain, every board member I've ever worked with has gained more back from the experience to see how another company operates. I recruited, one of my first assignments, recruited a Cardinal executive, one of the top 5 executives in Cardinal, onto a small company board here in town. And he said, I changed the way I did business at Cardinal because of that. Because what I saw, this small company being nimble, I needed to learn how to be nimble. But so the money compensation is never equal to what you have to give or what you get back. And so don't do it thinking that the money's important on it. That's not it at all.
Okay. Great feedback on our talk. Wonderful audience participation with all the questions. One last reminder, hashtag Cardinal Board to be into the drawing, as well as hit the subscribe and like buttons for the Clubby channel. So as we wrap things up here, Jim, if you have to leave our audience kind of with one main theme or kind of last nugget of information for them to take away from our conversation, what would that be?
Be intentional. If you want to join a board, be intentional. Do these activities that we talked about and really work hard at doing it. And when you get on a board like you are, Rick, be intentional for being there. Don't be having your phone out while you're at the board meeting or anything like that. But for a company, if you have a board or if you think about doing, be intentional. It's a really important thing to do, and it takes work. And take it seriously, because it's really, really beneficial when everybody is there for the right reasons.
Okay, so a non-board related question, a general business one, but I've been asking folks that we've been talking to here on Clubby, is what is an important lesson that you learned over your career that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Compound interest. And what I mean is, if every day you invest in yourself, over the next 30 years, you're going to be a rich person in something. Obviously, Berkshire Hathaway is a great example. I mean, Warren Buffett started that with hardly anything. It's just compound interest. So take that idea and put it on yourself. And that's why all of a sudden you're of value to a board, because of that compound interest.
That's great. That's great. I'm going to use that with my post-college kids, because I always try to get them to do a little extra work, but I think you summarized it a little better than I have in the past. So that's great. Hey, Jim, it's been wonderful having you here today. Wonderful answers and audience participation. Thank you very much, and I hope you'll join us again.
Will do. Love to. Take care, Rick.
All right, yeah. And then a reminder, Jim's email is jimz@cardinalboardservices.com. You can find that in the comments field, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again, Jim.
Okay, take care. Bye.